What is going on, everybody? Good evening. Welcome back to Dead Air Live. I guess we're going to call it Dead Air Full Spectrum with McKen DaCosta and myself. Yeah, I'm trying to think about what we're going to do with that, Ken, because the channel, our YouTube channel, is Dead Air Full Spectrum, but that's going to cover a lot of things that we'll get into a little bit later on in the show. But for us and what we do here, maybe you reach out to our viewers there in the chat, see if they can come up with, do we go with Dead Air Live, Dead Air with Ken and George, Dead Air with George and Ken? Whatever's going to suit your fancy for you guys to tune in with us. But good evening. Here we are on another Sunday, our second show with our amazing affiliates, KGRA Digital Broadcasting. And we are right now on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different platforms at the same time. Ken, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I am excited about this. Looking forward to it tonight. To get to talk to the bishop again. We had a great conversation with him a few months back. So I am very, very happy we'll be able to bring him to this audience tonight. And just to remind everybody, we have call-in capabilities. We'll be putting those up a little bit later on.
Yes.
We're simulcasting on YouTube, Facebook, and KGRA Digital Broadcasting. So we're omnipresent. You can't miss us unless you try.
That's right. KGRADB.com, KGRA on YouTube, KGRA on Facebook, and of course, Dead Air Full Spectrum, Facebook and YouTube. And don't forget also Rise Up Paranormal on Facebook. So we're everywhere, not to mention anybody else that's picking us up during these broadcasts. And we appreciate the piggyback that everybody's been giving us. Bishop James Long. I'm surprised that he can fit us in his hectic schedule, and we'll get into that. Yeah, Halloween time frame. I've been talking about it, and I can just happen to come across a show now that I am infatuated with. It's on CBS, but I watch it on Hulu, and it's called Ghosts, and it is it's a comedy setting. But what I love about it is a young couple inherits this mansion, this home. Here in the United States, and all of the ghosts are just every single stereotype that you could think of. But what's funny is they have one Norwegian Viking that for some reason got left here in the States, and that's when he died here. How he dies is funny as hell. That's episode 3. But you have the typical woman of the house. You have a Native American in the basement. You have a bunch of people who died, I think, from cholera. But it adds so much humor to it, all the way to more recent times where there was a Wall Street guy who committed suicide, killed himself. There's some great comedy writing with this. So if anybody's out there, make sure you check it out. I don't know, is comedy with the paranormal something you get enjoyment out of, Ken?
I like Ghostbusters.
That's
that pretty much sums it up right there.
That's a staple. Yeah.
Hey, listen, comedy and the paranormal goes back a long ways. You had the Abbott and Costello, the Universal movies back then. Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein and Dracula and the Wolfman. So the idea of comedy making its way into the paranormal and taking a serious subject and holding it up to the mirror and having a few laughs with it. Nothing wrong with that.
And nothing new, by no means whatsoever. Quick happy birthday shout out to our good friend at the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, Rebecca Jordan Gleason. Happy birthday today. So we wish her well. But yeah, I mean, for what we have during the Halloween, we are getting into some darker topics today. And for those of you that are joining us for the first time on any of the platforms, please, please, definitely, when you get a chance to stop by Dead Air Full Spectrum, hit that subscribe button. Don't forget the reminder bell for upcoming content, and most importantly, what do the kids say, Ken? Smash that
Smash
thumbs
it.
up. Smash that thumbs up.
Smash
Very
it.
important.
Appealing to you very much to, if you wake the neighbors and children, get them up, watch the show, subscribe to this channel. It means a lot to us. We're in a lot of different platforms right now.
That's
So
right.
it's important to the survival of the show and to keep this train going.
Its growth and again, the popularity. We've got wonderful, wonderful responses so far with our first show last week, and I don't expect anything different tonight. Now, a little bit of a disclaimer that we like to have fun on the show. We with our guests, with our own topics, whatever it may be. There's going to be a serious point in time with our interview with Bishop Long tonight regarding some of the things that I've dealt with over the last 7, 8 years with regards to oppression. And it's not about me, and it's not like let's focus around George. This is if you guys can relate, if you guys have had issues like this, there's
Good
no
point.
better talking points because we'll have Bishop giving incredible advice over a vast number of years of experience dealing with exorcisms, dealing with demonic entities, demonic cases, and then Mr. Ken DaCosta from a pragmatic standpoint, looking at it from a different perspective. So I hope you guys have your coffee, sit back and relax. I've got my coffee, and we've got our first cold front here, Ken. It's in the mid 60s tonight. I actually have my garage door open to get some cool air coming in. So let's wait no further.
Yeah,
Please introduce our guest for tonight.
Yeah, we are going to send positive energy down south to Florida for being in the mid 60s. Like Godspeed to you all.
It's sweater weather. Mr. DaCosta, go ahead, please.
Okay, Archbishop James Long is an old Catholic bishop. He's based out of Louisville, Kentucky. He studied for the Roman Catholic priesthood for 6 years and was mentored by a validly ordained and trained exorcist. He is currently a bishop of the United States Old Catholic Church and has devoted his entire life to the studying of demonology and the paranormal. And there is no better authority on this subject than our guest tonight, Bishop James Long. How are you, my friend?
I am doing fantastic, and I'll definitely say some prayers for the folks in Florida in 60-degree weather. I can't imagine the pain you guys are suffering right now.
Yeah, I know. Look at him. He's just a shell of himself. Right now.
I mean, it's brutal.
Oh my God.
I'm going to open a window here. Just go ahead.
That's terrible. That is.
So, Bishop, how has your summer been? How are you generally speaking? How are you navigating these times? And is everybody doing well? And how about yourself?
Well, boy, gosh, summer just flew by. I've always been a big guy for all my life. I played football, always been one of those big monster, linemen kind of a, guy. So I've always had issues with weight. And in 2015, I had the gastric sleeve surgery, which really was a mistake because I really needed to bypass. But my doctor kind of said, oh, yeah, those sleeves just as effective. And so anyway, I had the sleeve surgery and I did lose. I lost 70 pounds, which I'm grateful for that. I really am. But I had a lot more to lose. And so I finally spoke to a surgeon that I just deeply admire. He's a private pilot, and he also rescues animals that are abused or neglected. And so he's phenomenal. I mean, he's one of the best surgeons. And so I said, look, I need this fixed. And he said, well, let's do the bypass. And so I said, okay. And I have done the bypass, and I had the surgery, a gastric bypass. I had the surgery on the 27th of September, and already I've lost 20 pounds. So I am very, very happy.
Wow.
Incredibly excited. Well, because I can't do this. Look, I can't help people when I'm 300 pounds. I just can't. And because number one, an exorcist has to be spiritually and mentally strong. I feel I got that. But as far as the physically strong, I did not. I was in trouble, and I had no business whatsoever performing exorcisms or even taking on demonic cases with a serious weight problem. I didn't really want to talk about this because I'm a very private person. But at the same time, maybe somebody who has a weight problem might need to hear, hey, look, there are answers. And you need to know the difference between a gastric sleeve, gastric bypass, and a lap band. I mean, because people have weight problems and legitimate weight problems. And so I had the bypass, and my God, I'm so great. I'm so grateful because now I can lose this weight. I feel better already. And when I get to a healthier state as far as physically, then I can start picking up the demonic cases right now. But right now, the priority is getting healthy, being strong, and then facing the demonic. You cannot face the demonic
Yeah.
if you're mentally, physically, spiritually weak. You just can't do it.
Well, you're far too young, far too vital to
Well, thank you.
everyone to be compromised like that. How's your energy levels?
Great.
Do you find there?
Much better now, of course, but I mean, when I get down to 250, 230, it's going to be a different life. And I was at one time, I had weighed 200 pounds. And remember, that was maybe in grade school, I was 200 pounds, but I felt fantastic, but I was starving myself too. I was literally starving myself. This was in my 20s. And I was running 7 miles a day every single day. And I never missed a day, 7 miles a day. I was running fast. But I was also not eating. And so, yeah, I lost a lot of weight, but I did it unhealthy. And see, the thing is I think very quickly, I know this has nothing to do with demonology, but this is important because I know that there are people out there struggling with their weight, and people say, well, why don't you just get away from the table? That is so offensive, because I guarantee you that I eat less than most people who are listening or watching the show right now, even in my highest weight. My problem has always never been overeating. My problem has always been the sweets. If I'm stressed, if I'm anxious, if I'm happy, if I'm depressed, if I'm bored, if I'm just whatever, I go to sweets. And that's why the gastric bypass, you don't go to sweets anymore because it's quite uncomfortable. The effects of that is very uncomfortable. So that's why I should have had the bypass. But I can teach people now the experience that I've had as having the gastric sleeve surgery and talking about my experience with that, and also now the bypass. And that's what I do. I go to groups that are the bypass groups, the weight loss groups, and I tell people my experience. And if I can help one person, then that's it makes it all worth it.
Generally speaking, that's what we do on this show, and it's why we bring people like yourself on, because I know George is going to get into a specific situation, and I'm going to step away for a little while. Of course, I'll be back because I got a host of questions for you and a lot of topics we want to get into.
Sure.
But again, I want to emphasize that I believe, unless we hear different, we have call-in capabilities if you'd like to speak to the bishop or us. And if you have questions, please put them in chat, because one of the reasons that Bishop Long is so generous with his time here is the opportunity to connect to you. You may hear something tonight that you've been going through, or someone that you care about is going through. And it doesn't have to come down to possession or oppression or something like that. It can be something spiritual, something in your life. We're here to try to help, or the bishop is anyway. He's working through a higher power to do that. So I'm going to step away with that. And I know George wants to have a bit of a conversation about something that he has endured for a number of years. Some of our new viewers may not be quite familiar with it. So I think he's going to briefly go over that a little bit. So we'll be back in a little while. But George, I leave you in the good hands of Bishop James Long.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Ken. And Bishop, we have a lot of people who have been following us for quite some time, a lot of people who follow the paranormal for quite a while, but it still warrants that reintroduction as far as you as our guest, and also to state the qualifications for why people will reach out to you, why 8 years ago I reached out to you, which was like in the early morning hours because of what I began dealing with. But if you could kind of share everybody your history, your background, and where you have your experience, especially with regards to demonic cases.
Sure. Well, as you guys mentioned in the beginning, I studied for the Roman Catholic priesthood for 6 years. It was truly the best years of my life. I loved it. I studied with the Benedictines and the Jesuits. I went to Loyola University in Chicago and St. Meinrad Seminary with the Benedictines. Loyola was with the Jesuits. I study philosophy and, of course, all the theology classes. And I have a bachelor's in communications and journalism. And then we had to, move to the master's degree level, so graduate school. So I finished the undergraduate. I went to St. Mary of the Lake in Mundelein, Illinois, which is really known as Little Rome. It's beautiful. Absolute God, the campus is phenomenal. The school is top notch. I mean, really, I was so blessed to have some of the brightest philosophers and theologians. I was truly blessed. And I received my minor orders in the seminary. But really, it was during that time that I just kind of felt God was nudging me. Hey, look, this is a great path. And of course, when I was in the seminary, I was studying demonology extensively. I studied it since 9. I knew I wanted to be a priest when I was 5. But at 9, I began reading books on demonology.
Wow.
I didn't know why I wanted to read books on. I just knew I had to read books on demons and angels. It was almost an obsession. And most of the time I really didn't quite fully grasp what the meaning of it, because it was in-depth reading. But I've never stopped reading. I've just always. But so I read even more in-depth and detailed books, phenomenal books on demonology and possession while I was in the seminary. But through prayer and my spiritual director, we just kind of talked about my feeling about where God was calling me. And I made a very difficult, there was not an easy decision to join the Old Catholics. It was one of the hardest decisions I've ever really had made in my life, because my mom was a very proud Roman Catholic, and her son was going to be studying for her. He's going to be a priest. And she was so excited about that. And my parish had not had it, a seminarian, studying for the priesthood. So they were excited. I mean, everybody was so excited. And when I told her, I really feel God is calling me to this, it was not an easy decision. It was terrible. It was quite difficult. I let a lot of people down because they were so proud to have this seminary. My mom was, but I just felt this is what I needed to do, because I wanted to be able to minister to everyone, regardless of your race, gender, sexual orientation, marital status, or even your faith. I didn't want to say, well, I'm sorry, you're not Roman Catholic, I can't help you. To me, I couldn't lay my head on the pillow at night. I just felt like I needed to help everybody, regardless of their faith. And so I decided to join the Old Catholics, and that's where I was ordained a deacon, a priest, and I was consecrated to the episcopacy. Now, people will question about the Old Catholics and say, well, it's not really valid. Yeah, actually, it is valid. The Old Catholics, the Roman Catholic Church, acknowledges Old Catholics' ordinations and consecrations, because we have what's called apostolic succession. So in other words, this bishop laid hands upon this priest and upon this priest, so I can show my apostolic succession to Peter. And according to the Roman Catholic Church, any church that can show apostolic succession is considered validly Catholic. And you can read that's Dominus Jesus, that was written by Pope John Paul and signed by Ratzinger. So, and there's we're not going to go into the defense of the Old Catholics, but basically the Old Catholics branched from the Roman Catholic Church officially in 1890s over papal infallibility, because the church in Utrecht, in Netherlands, was giving complete autonomy by Pope Leo XIII, because the Pope couldn't keep going back and forth consecrating bishops. Sure. And so he gave them autonomy, and they grew the church on their own, with their own money, with their own everything. They never asked any help for Rome, nothing. Rome gave them. So then they became very wealthy, and Rome was needing some funds. And so Rome then said, okay, well, give us your money and your property. And the church in Utrecht said, no, wait, we're not doing that, because we have autonomy. So you're not coming and just taking this is the community's money. And Rome said, no, it's not. And then the Pope declared himself infallible without error, and said, now, if you don't do this, you're heretics. And the church in Utrecht said, no, this is absurd. And so there was a split within the church. And so I joined the Old Catholics. Now, the Old Catholics is a little complicated, because we don't have an overseer like Rome.
Right.
And so each bishop has their own jurisdiction. And so in the Old Catholics, there are some very liberal Old Catholics. There are some extremely conservative. And then there's moderate. And the United States Old Catholic Church is considered moderate. So this is where I am today. And as of today, I performed 30 documented exorcisms. And I really, George, I didn't want to go. I didn't want to go live. I didn't want to go public with my ministry, because I am actually an extreme introvert. which might surprise people, but I am an INFJ on Briar Miggs. So if you see the personality test, I'm an extreme INFJ. So I didn't want to go public. And when people were telling me, James, there's no clergy helping the paranormal community. Well, we only have Father Andrew Calder, and he's an offshoot of Episcopalian, and he has no desire to perform exorcisms.
Yeah.
So we have no one to help us. So when I went public 20 years ago, it was crazy. It just exploded into this thing that I never expected. And that's when the TVs and History Channel and Travel Channel and Ghost Adventure, they were just slamming me. It was like, what in the heck is going on? I was never expecting that, nor did I want it. Because I've never been paid for any of my shows, any of the shows. I do it strictly 100% free, and to get the name out, the paranormal clergy, which I gave to Rich Valdez, who is a demonologist for the church.
Yeah,
and so there we go. That's the whole thing. And I help teams, and I help people as much as I can.
Yeah, and God bless you for what you've done. And I would say probably it's been 10 years since you first came on as our guest with Blog Talk with Dead Air. And you were very, I don't want to say shy, but certainly you were less of a conversationalist at that point in time, still either unsure or still trying to get a feel for the field, because you have to kind of know the ins and outs with people regards to the paranormal. And I think you navigated that exceptionally, and staying out of the way of things that could easily tarnish your reputation. And you've held on to that beautifully over the years. And that's what led to the situation with me contacting you. And let's turn the clock back a little bit and look at maybe 2 years time frame that you and I began corresponding back and forth. But again, your reputation preceded itself, and everybody spoke so highly of you. So I want to bring this to the viewers, the story and what led up to me contacting you, and where I'm at this point in time also. So I'll try to do the best Reader's Digest version that I can. Paranormal investigator, I've been doing this for some 15 years, and there's a particular place here in Florida in the Ocala National Forest. It's called Curse City. Now, this place was off the map, off the grid, and had so much activity. It was insane. First 4 years going there, I went there 14 times. The next 4 years going there, I went there 4. Why did it drop so much? Because the energies there became extremely dark. Some of the reasons we believe was people coming in and disrespecting the property. I know in the oldest house on the property, some investigators came in, decided they were going to smoke on the second floor of this old wooden home, and they had actually burned a cigarette through a styrofoam cup they were using as an ashtray, and it could have just burned this entire incredible structure to the ground. So my guess is they probably also provoked and did some horrible things, and that's where the energies got darker, or the layers got pulled back more. In any event, so here's where George made the big mistake. While I was investigating there was one particular closet on the second floor of the father's house that we deemed a portal. Just too many things that we were experiencing. We were doing multiple tests, and this was one of the things that, as we know as paranormal investigators, there are risks involved in this field. So I decided that I was going to go into this closet, close the door, and say probably the worst thing you could possibly say. Show me where you come from. And the visuals that I received were horrific, and that's where all the trouble started, Bishop. Now, by the time I contacted you, there was a sequence of, the best way that I could describe it were night terrors. Actually, our good friend John Zaff is the one who gave me that nomenclature and said, "Joe, that's night terrorism. These things act like terrorists. They've got all the time in the world. They've got all the patience in the world, and they will just chip away at you until they can finally get you to break down." The very first contact in my sleep was something pulling me down in this fabricated in my dream hotel room, and I held onto the curtain, hoping to pull it away so that the sunlight would come in and rescue me, which it did. So that was just the feeling. The second one was just a set of eyes at the end of my bed that I still believe that when I woke up, they were there, red eyes. Um, but there was a different feeling at that point in time. I felt more euphoric of if there's something that evil, that there is something that is greater than that in the aspect of good that will help me battle that. But then it got very, very dark. The third one was probably the worst one, where it starts off where I'm in my bed as a child, and there are two hands, long gray with long fingernails, dealing cards on the bed. And then it gets into some personal stuff, and I can't air that. I don't want to air that, but let's just say it was effing with me and my connection to my family, which has always been strong. Um, Literally demonizing members of my family in this scenario. It was at that point in time that I happened to contact three specific people in my life: Bishop Long, John Zaffis, who's a renowned demonologist, and Andrea Perrin, because she was a friend. And for at least a week, I did not sleep in my bed. I did not sleep until sunrise because it was fragmenting me personally. And one of the things that you said to me at that point in time, Bishop, is this is going to be with you for the rest of your life. You're going to deal with this for the rest of your life. And I have. And so, not to wax on about some of the others, because there have been so many other violent, whether it was sexually motivated in these dreams or it was just straight up violence, horrific things from time to time. When you're having a nightmare versus when you're having an invasion, when you're having something intrude upon you. There's just this other level. And, you know, fast forward to today, um, one of the things, my mom passed.
Mm.
My entire family is fragmented now. Um, and we've talked about all the things that would lead towards oppression, which is taking things away from you and almost isolating you. I want you to speak on the cases. Now, people may ask in the chat, people may ask if they call later on the line, did any of this manifest itself in person? The answer is no. Everything has been surreptitious. And I think the reason, again, is because I've been doing this for so long in the field. I can protect myself when I'm conscious. I can't when I'm sleeping. I can't, as much as I prepare to. And I have woken up from these attacks saying the Lord's Prayer, saying Psalm 23. I've always woken up angry and ready for battle. But again, they have all the time in the world. They could wait 6 months. They could wait a year and a half. They could wait 10 years and say, okay, we're going to get them again. And it's almost as if they keep sending mini soldiers to test my armor and find out that weak point so that eventually they can get me. And there's been times, Bishop, where I felt it came that close. And I don't mean to get emotional about this again, but it touched home heavily on a myriad occasions. Um, can you please speak on if you even remember the conversation we had initially, and if this is just a reoccurring thing you've dealt with other people, and and again, for those who are out there that might have some similar occurrences too, listen to the wise words of this man, please, Bishop.
I do remember the conversation, and people. I understand people not wanting to believe in demonic entities, especially when you're dealing with incubus, and succubus, and because it's frightening. It is frightening. It's very, very scary. I mean, it's a terrifying experience, and it's kind of out of sight, out of mind, and people just simply don't want to think about it. However, I've had some very, very violent incubus and succubus cases, incredibly violent, and normally when you're dealing with an incubus and succubus, what happens is it starts out with sleep paralysis, and there is what's called ISP, which is intermittent sleep paralysis, and RISP, which is recurrent isolated sleep paralysis, which happens often. Now, isolated sleep paralysis is exactly what it sounds like. It doesn't happen very often. I had a neurologist on my show once, and I spoke to him about sleep paralysis, and he actually believes in demonic entities in possession. And now, those people who have recurrent isolated sleep paralysis, he said you really do need to be tested for narcolepsy, because this is something that narcolepsy has been found in RISP. Intermittent sleep paralysis, basically, what happens, and usually it can last up to 30 minutes, and
Right.
recurrent isolated sleep paralysis can last a little longer. And it
Exactly.
always occurs when, and this is how the neurologist explained to me, it always occurs when the body is beginning to go to sleep or waking up. And the reason being is because the subconscious part of the brain is taking over the reasoning part of the actual brain itself. And so many times that's why we're in we're paralysis. We can't move because the subconscious is the part of the brain where we dream. And so what happens is when we're going in that stage of sleep, we may immediately be thinking of something or projecting something, and something startles us, and we're alert. But yet our subconscious is still in control of the brain, of the motor functions. Now we may absolutely project. We can see this vision that we saw of the subconscious, of the demon, this horrible figure, whatever it might be, and it's standing there. And a lot of times we can't move, we can't talk, we can't see anything. And that usually sometimes lasts for about 30 seconds. And during that time, you're terrified. And because you feel like a victim. I mean, you're this creature, whatever it is has you under control. And then after the 30 seconds, when the conscious takes control of the brain, that's when that image usually always goes away, because the conscious is now aware and taking all the control of the motor functions and reasoning. It's the same thing going to sleep and waking up. Now, here's what happens when you have sleep paralysis. You also, the old hag syndrome, where it will begin on incubus and succubus. And incubus and succubus is the demonic entities that attack you on a sexual nature. And for incubus, obviously, it's for a woman, and succubus is for attacks men. And we see actually the origins of this is ancient origins of incubus and succubus. We see the first writings from 24 BC in Mesopotamia, and so where an incubus seduces women, or succubus will seduce men. Now, what happens is originally it's not violent on an incubus and succubus, and it's sexually pleasurable.
Now,
And so I'm sorry,
this wasn't everything about this was
because you were under stage of
disturbing.
you were under the stage of oppression, because you're already aware of what's going on. With the incubus and succubus, they began to, you have to have the invitation. And the invitation is that you don't stop it. You
Okay.
allow it to continue. And then it becomes incredibly intrusive in your life, and then violent. And that, because it already now it's aware that you know that what it is. And now it becomes very violent, and you begin to see ghastly images and horrible figures. And but again, it's attacking you on in a sleep paralysis state, because remember, these are parasites. They are opportunists, and they're going to attack you when you're most vulnerable, not when you're strongest, when you're most vulnerable. And when you are going to sleep or waking up, you're very vulnerable if you have oppression. And in your stage, that was oppression.
Let me ask you, did it have any bearing? I call it the four quarters of the first game, and I described that the first dream was just the feeling, the presence. The second one was the eyes. The third one was the hands. Um, in that third one, also, by my command, in the name of Jesus Christ, reveal yourself. And it changed from my family member to this gray fleshed, huge, smiled, jagged teeth face that identified itself and actual gave its name. And you know the name, and I know we don't like to say them out loud. It
Yeah.
starts with a
Yeah.
B. Very recognizable name, starts with a B. Why that would come up, of all things. The fourth and final one was on Christmas Eve while I was visiting my family in South Florida. And in this particular one, I was sleeping in the guest bedroom. And in this one, I rose above the bed, and this thing walked in full body, but it was wearing a kind of like a long raincoat or trench coat kind of a thing with the tail sticking out of the back, but it showed full form. Is that some sort of a progression recognizable to you that you've heard before also?
Oh, sure. Matter of fact, you see, there's two types of demonic activity. There's what's called ordinary demonic activity, and that's when the demonic will begin to tempt you to do things that you ordinarily would not do,
Right.
lust or sin or things. And then there's extraordinary demonic activity. And extraordinary demonic activity is where you have the old saying, the infestation, oppression, possession. But really, there's more to it. The infestation is when the demonic infests itself within the home, and then it begins the demonic oppression. Demonic oppression is the physical attacks. And demonic obsession is when it begins to mentally attack you. So at this point, what it's doing is mentally and physically attacking you for the sole purpose of breaking down the intellect and will. You cannot have possession without intellect and will being eradicated. So that's the stages of oppression. And so it can go on for months. It can go on for even longer than that. Just depends on how long it takes to break the intellect and will down. So you got to think about this, George. I mean, and concerning the fact what you've been through, but people got to understand when I talk about breaking down the will, we throw these terms out, but I want you to really analyze what I'm saying here. Breaking down the person's will, when you break someone's will, that ultimately is saying you have broken them down so much that they can no longer fight. They are absolutely beyond, I'm not talking tired, they're beyond that. Because it attacks you physically, it attacks you mentally, it attacks you spiritually, it will bite you, it will pinch you, it will terrify you. Your sleep pattern now is completely eradicated. I mean, everything is just crazy. Your life is turned upside down. You're having panic attacks. And it continues and continues and continues. And then it begins to attack the mental part, the intellect. And it begins eventually to interact with you and speak with you. And it really does mimic schizophrenia, where it tells you you're stupid and no one loves you and you're hated and God doesn't love you. And the whole purpose is to break your intellect and will down to the point where you isolate yourself and you can't fight anymore. You just can't fight. You're done, beyond exhausted. And that's when possession occurs.
Is there cases that you can recall or you're aware of, maybe perhaps even conversation? Lord knows you've been to so many different paranormal event weekends, and not to mention, again, the shows that you've done and your own shows, and we're going to be talking about that here, that people have, I don't want to use the word conquer, because I've not conquered this, not in any way, shape, or form, but that they recognize what is happening to them. And had it not been for my phone call with you and with John, with Andrea, who knows what would have happened at that time. But to recognize it, understand it, and say, okay, when this is happening, I know why. They're testing and trying me. Again, the chinks in my armor, they're looking for the weakness, and I'm not going to give it to them. And that has always been kind of the next defense for that individual, to say it's never going to work. And I've said that out loud after waking up from one of these. It's not going to work. Or if you want to fight, let's do it toe to toe right now. You're not going to win. And to make sure that, and yeah, I'll even state something out here right now. A member of the VA, and I made some contact to have some therapy to deal with what I've been dealing with, as far as not being happy, having depression, things of that sort. So I know it's still being weighed on me, but as you just said, it could take years sometimes for this kind of thing to take effect. Or do you believe that there can be some cases where that will is never broken down because the person is either in control enough, or is aware enough of what is happening to them, that they can keep control? Or is it inevitability? I'd love to know that.
No, it's not inevitability. And the beautiful thing is, but you still had enough will and strength to reach out and ask for help. That is when I'm talking about going into possession, the person literally has no more strength to even do that, because the demonic has already told them, has already spoken, no one's going to help you. They're all going to think you're crazy. And so the intellect is completely to the point where it's broken down, where they isolate themselves from even the people they know that can possibly help them. And they don't even have the courage or even the strength to reach out and ask someone for help. So you were at the stage of oppression where the demonic was attacking you and attacking your intellect and will, but you still had the strength and the fortitude, of course, and the intellect to reach out and ask for help. No, I always tell people in the worst incubus and succubus cases that I've ever worked in my life, and even demonic infestation, I always tell people, I want you to always remember this. And this is my mantra, even when I'm dealing with the demonic, especially when dealing demonic. I will not be your victim.
Amen.
And that is non-negotiable. And so if I begin to have thoughts that are irregular, thoughts that I know that are not mine, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus Christ. And I'm no, and that's defeating it. That is taking a stand, recognizing the evil, invoking God's name, and moving on. And not, one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to focus so heavily on what the demonic has done, because it will play over and over and over in your head, even to the point where it becomes an obsession. And then before you know it, the demonic will begin. It's reeling you in. Is what it's doing. It's playing mind games with you, and just simply say, "I'm not going to be your victim today. I, with God on my shoulder, I've defeated you." So there's nothing. Now you don't want to fight. You don't want to. It's just simply, I'm not being your victim. In the name of Jesus Christ, I'm not going to be your victim. Yeah. And that is my mantra every time a demonic attacks me, which is constant. I will not be your victim. And I don't negotiate with that.
Exactly. Again, it's an important part of the mindset. And, for those people who have been considering delving into the paranormal, there are many risks involved, from the physical risk to the spiritual risk, but there's risks involved. I understood that when I stepped into that portal. When I asked that question, I understood that. And we did a couple of these shows, and I want to bring Ken back on if he has a moment, and because I'm going to have to compose myself here in a little bit. But back probably about 4 or 5 years ago, when we were still on the podcast for Dead Air, I went through the entire show and talked about this, and I think, Bishop, you might have been on that episode, because I started from the beginning and talked about this entire thing. And I wanted that for record, because if anything were to have happened to me, I wanted people to understand the process of what I went through. So now, for people who are listening that maybe sense that they may be having some of these situations going on in their home, how I've been able to do this now for 10 years since this attack, and still maintain my sanity for the most part. Even with the family being fragmented, and health issues, and this issue and that issue, that I'm dealing with a lot of procrastination as of late. I'm dealing with a lot more of not joking around, except when I'm in front of the camera. That's a big part of the performance part of it. But when I'm isolated, when I'm by myself, I look for things on TV and on the computer to laugh at. Thank God for TikTok, right? So it's a lot of these things are really, really important to search out and be distracted by. But you said it. Will is everything. Will is everything. That free will, that decision, and to not let go of your individuality and who you are with relation to God, who you are in relationship to your particular faith, I think is critically important. And Ken, thanks for coming back on here. I need to just compose myself a second. I'll let you guys talk about this particular situation, and I'll leave you with this, Bishop. I appreciated that night that you spoke to me. I appreciated your candor, telling me that this is something I may be dealing with for the rest of my life, but life goes on, and that's the most important part of it. So I appreciate your friendship.
Well, not only that, and I appreciate that, George, but just remember this. One of the things that you can do with this, and because especially with people who've had the incubus and succubus and demonic attacks, is that they say, "Well, what's next?" And I always tell people, you have a beautiful gift, that you've been through hell, you've walked through hell, and you've actually now you came out as a survivor. And what you can teach people, and the same thing when I talked to Andrea about this, what you can teach people is something that I can't. Now I've had demonic attacks but I've studied it all my life. And you, as a laity, you have a beautiful opportunity right now to teach people how you are handling this and how you're overcoming it. You're not a victim, you are a survivor, and you are absolutely whipping this demon's butt. And that is the best thing to do at this point of time. Teach people, tell people your story, and I tell you what a great gift what a great gift that you can give back.
Pay it
God bless.
forward.
Yeah.
Thank you so much on that. Ken, why don't you take us to the top of the hour, sir?
Sure. All right. We'll give George, thank you, first of all, for sharing that with everyone. Some of our new listeners probably weren't aware of that, but George has the courage and the strength, and as one viewer put it, the transparency to talk about those kind of things. And this is why we do this a lot of times, to let people know, listen, you're not alone. There are people who go through these things, and sometimes just acknowledging them and talking them out and bringing them into the light is your support system. And in George's case, his story is at once distressing, heart-rendering, and ultimately, hopefully, uplifting. So we wanted to, before we get to the top of the hour, Bishop, we want to throw a couple of questions your way in chat, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
Jeff,
and I want to say something, if you don't mind, real quick.
yes, please.
What you said was beautiful. Is that you're not alone. You truly are not, folks. Let me tell you
Mhm.
something. I'm a big data guy, and when I studied my master's of education, data was very, very important. And the Frontiers in Psychiatry published an article on individuals who had been attacked by incubus and succubus, and they had 1,800 people from all across the world, not just the United States. The researchers actually found that 1 in 10 people, or 11% of the population, actually experience the incubus succubus phenomenon in their
Mhm.
lifetimes. So that means that people there are so this is actually more prevalent than what people are willing to admit or talk about because of the nature of of what happens. So what George is talking about, 1 out of every 10 people experience, according to this research.
Mhm. And there are some people who, a quick story of my own, from the ages of about 13 to 15, I also dealt with sleep paralysis, but never to the point where I felt an entity or saw an entity. It was probably the purest form of that, where in my case, there was, the best way to describe it is a whistling that just got louder, cyclical in my head, and I couldn't move. And I didn't know what this was at the time. And then eventually it dissipated and went away. And it got to the point where, in that kind of beta state between waking and sleeping, when you're most vulnerable to this, eventually I got to the point where I would literally in my own head say, uh-oh, here we go. It's starting. Okay, I just got to ride this out. And I found that if I just focused and concentrated on just moving my finger or a toe, I'd come out of it. So
Oh.
dealt with it. So a lot of people who maybe are, I don't want to say suffering, but experiencing that kind of thing, it's maybe something to think about. But I must say, thankfully, I never went to the extreme on that. But it is, without question, a physiological state that happens to a lot of people that have experienced that. All right, I want to get to a question by Jeff Hilton here. Bishop, he says, Bishop Long, have you ever had a case that made you think about giving up doing exorcisms? Is there anything extreme, maybe perhaps as a youngin in the game, so to speak?
um well, as far as giving it up, no. But as far as having being emotionally involved, yes. And that's so when I go take a case, I'm very stoic, because you have to be pastoral, but at the same time you're dealing with the demonic entity. So the emotions, you just have to put those in check. But I got to tell you, yeah, there was one case. She was 68 years old. And I've told this story before, and I deeply loved her. She was just a wonderful woman. She's like a grandma. You know, she'd go into her house and she just wanted to hug you and feed you and take care of you. But she was dealing with a very violent incubus. As a matter of fact, I didn't know anything about this, and her family had contacted me along with her doctor. She was in intensive care because her private area had been ripped and her anal area had been ripped. And she was going to the church, and she described it as a plunger being used to attack her. And so she crashed her truck. And so she went in the hospital because it was a severe tear. And so her doctor actually believed in possession. And so the family contacted me, and I don't know I don't know if they saw me. I can't remember where they saw me, but so I got involved with her case, and she had been attacked for 5 years. And this was and she described them as bed walkers. So when, this was a sleep paralysis episode where she was
excuse me, is that
Yeah.
another term for that, Bishop? I've never heard that term before, bed walker.
Well, no, well, she described them as bed walkers.
Okay, yeah.
So like when she was about to, she was still awake, but she would feel what she was as bed walkers, like 3 10-pound dogs, walking slowly towards her and creeping. And that's how she described it. And then they would grab her and hold her down and do terrible things to her. And so matter of fact, my team is the only team in the entire world that actually has captured an incubus on video. So she's very small. She was a very small woman. The bed sheets rose about 3-4 feet and then fell, and then rose about 3 or 4 feet and fell again. And that's when, she was screaming because they were attacking her. So when I got involved with her, she had been being attacked for 5 years, and she went through hell. I mean, my God, what this woman went through was pure hell. And I worked with her for, I think, about 3 years. And the last year of her life, thank God, she was no longer being sexually assaulted, but she sometimes would feel the bedwalkers, but they would never touch her. And then when she passed away, the family asked me to perform her funeral. And that was hard. That was performing a funeral for like a loved one, a family member, because I truly grew to love her. And for 3 years, I saw her suffer. And I think for me, I got very frustrated. And I talked to my mentor about this case, and I said, I'm doing everything. I'm using the sacramentals. I'm using the holy water. I'm using the oil. I'm using the rite. I'm praying the rosary. I'm doing this. And he said, that is your big problem right there. I said, what? He said, you have such ego that you don't even realize it. I said, well, I beg your pardon. I'm trying to help this woman. He said, all I've heard you say is I. You're doing nothing. You're doing absolutely nothing except for feeding your ego. You don't do a darn thing. You are there representing God, and God will deliver this person in God's time. You are not there to question. You are there to do the right, do what you're supposed to do, and let God control it. And I needed that because the demonic was feeding off my ego. The demonic was feeding off my weaknesses of self-doubt, and it was amplifying it. I'm doing everything by the book. And I didn't even recognize it. And that was the most profound teaching that he's ever taught me. It truly was, because I needed to hear that because I was taking it so personal. And you do when this person is terrorized. And so I learned how to just, okay, I'm obviously being attacked here, and I've got to take a step back. And I've got to focus on the right. I've got to do exactly what I'm supposed to do. And I've got to give it in God's hands. And God will deliver this person in God's time. And that's when it happened. That's when the actual explosion, the splat, whatever you want to call it, that's when it actually happened. And that was very powerful. That was a very powerful experience. But when she passed, she a year without being attacked, that was hard. Performing a funeral was hard. So that's really the only case that really took an emotional, personal toll. Otherwise, I've always been very stoic,
Yeah. We've got about 3 minutes coming up on the break here right now. I'm going to ask you a quick question heading up to the break before we bring George back on. Assuming a case has met all the criteria that you set forth, and I know part of your process is a psychological evaluation, a medical evaluation, the possibility of medications before you even get involved, and your group handles that end of it before you get contacted to say, hey, I think we have something here that warrants you administering to. Is there once you arrive there and it's been determined that your skills are necessary there, is there a tell when you first engage an individual as to the nature of the oppression, or is it a process that you have to go through before you even arrive there? But with your experience, is there something that you immediately look to say, okay, this is the nature of what I'm dealing with here? Because only experience can teach you that.
Yeah. An answer in 60 seconds.
Yes.
Yeah. It took me longer to get the question out. I know that.
Yeah, there is, and we can talk about possession, the types of possession, and a deliverance, and the difference between the minor rite of exorcism, a deliverance, and the solemn rite of exorcism, because they're not the same.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
so we can talk about that.
Yeah, let's come back on the other side and do that, George. Take us out right now.
Yeah, absolutely. We again are speaking to Bishop James Long, and we are going to get into a lot of his social media. And for those of you in the chat, and we appreciate your comments that have been rolling and scrolling through there that have to do with perhaps experiences that you're having. I cannot tell you somebody who's more on tap with being able to be contacted and talked to about this. So on the other side, we'll get all that information out there to you guys. But you are watching Dead Air Live on the Dead Air Spectrum, Full Spectrum channel. We'll be back right after this break. Stay with us.
Hey members, the new KGRA-DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA-DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA-DB.
I don't want to talk about it.
I don't want to talk about it.
Families don't have to talk about everything, but they should talk about how to plan for an emergency. Get tips and resources to make your family's emergency plan.
Welcome to the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. Here you'll find great new content, including the KGRA Classics, great shows from our archives. You'll be able to see the show times and information so you can see what show is currently on air. The On Air Live button, so just go to this section and you'll be able to hear the show live with exceptional sound quality. We also have the Vault section. Make sure to subscribe to get access to great content and special features. We have the make content for our latest news and events, so make sure to sign up and you can be part of our forum. So make sure to check out the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. We look forward to seeing you there, and we hope that you enjoy the new website.
And we are back for a second hour with Bishop James Long, and we're going to open up the phone lines here in just a little bit. Yeah, kgrdb.com. Again, you guys download that app. Then, if you're traveling, you don't have to worry about missing any of the shows live. And don't forget also, Dead Air Full Spectrum, the YouTube channel. You guys can always recommend this particular show or any of our shows to friends, and they can catch it on the replay at any time. Bishop James Long, thank you for joining us tonight. And I got one other thing I wanted to bring up. And again, Ken, if you want to run the phone number under us and the ticker tape, anybody wants to call in, I know we do have one on hold already. But and for those of you, you're going to have this guy with a really heavy New York accent answering the phone. So please try to understand the accent. It's horrible. It really is. Bishop, I talked about free will before, and I wanted to ask you, I got in trouble for this, at least from the chat years and years ago when we brought up demonic oppression, demonic possession. And one of the things, and I cannot tell you who it was that I think it was Adam Bly that had brought this up, but said those people who have had given up their free will in other forms in their life, substance abuse, alcohol and drug, domestic abuse, where they've been beaten down and they are subjugated, where they are, they don't have their own choice to say no in a situation, things like that, were potentially more susceptible to an oppression leading into a possession. Am I speaking out of turn with that, or is that a hypothesis that you subscribe to?
I completely understand what Adam is saying. And again, when we go back to demonic activity, remember there's ordinary demonic activity, extraordinary. So ordinary demonic activity can certainly lead to extraordinary demonic activity by falling into that temptation. So what Adam was saying is, for example, if alcohol or even drugs or lust, whatever it might be, and you fall into those temptations and it becomes a major problem where now the demonic has control over you with this horrible obsession that you have, whatever it might be, that's doing harm to your body. That can certainly absolutely open to extraordinary demonic activity. And so you have to be very careful with any type of, but we all suffer from some type of weaknesses in our life. We all sin. Every single one of us sin, but we acknowledge the sin and we try not to keep committing that sin. A person who has such an addiction to whether it be drugs or lust or whatever it is that's causing harm to the body, that is ultimately breaking down the intellect and will, and you're allowing the demonic to manipulate and attack you. So that certainly can lead to extraordinary demonic activity. I understand what he was saying.
Mm-hmm. Right now, we would like to take some calls, and I understand right now we have Angie in Tennessee on the line. Angie, are you there?
I am here.
All right. What's your question, dear?
I have no question, but I have sat here and watched George, and my heart just reaches out to him. I'm the daughter of the lady that Bishop Long just spoke of. I'm Angie in Tennessee.
God love you, Angie. How are you guys doing?
We're so sorry, Angie. How are you?
Well, it's very, very bizarre because I've kept track of Bishop Long over the years. And we don't keep in regular touch, but we do ever so often. And I stumbled upon his website today and thought I'd listen to his broadcast tonight on your show. And I saw George struggling a while ago. And I remember seeing that same in my mother. And it's just heart-wrenching to watch in someone you love. But George, I want you to know, Bishop Long nailed it. He says you're a fighter. And I can tell you for a fact, absolute fact, you're not only a fighter, you're a warrior. Because now you're a warrior in God's army. You fight on God's behalf. My mother had that problem till the day she died. Till the day she died. But she never gave up. And that's its entire principle. That's its purpose, is to make you give up.
Angie, what was your mother's name?
June.
All right. I'm adding June to my collective family. And when I say that, and Bishop knows it, and Ken definitely knows that, I have a support group on the other side that is so enormous, including Mom, Aunt Doris, my brother Bobby, who drowned at the age of 3 when I was 5 years old, to Amanda, Colette, Gabriel, and Michael, who are always there with me on investigations. Were there with me when I had done spirit box sessions all over the country. They've always been very, very protective of me. I would like your permission to add June to that family. I think that would be amazing. We're connected, and I can't thank you enough for your words of kindness.
Not a problem.
And let me
But
say this.
remember, George, you're being fired for heaven. You know that, right? You'll be a saint in heaven one day.
From your lips to God's ears.
Guys, Angie,
Bishop Long,
girl,
bless your heart. You're a godsend to so many people.
we got it. You know what? Are you on Facebook?
I don't do social media.
Okay. Well, then I don't have your number. I definitely want to speak. Let me tell you guys, this woman that's on this show right now, she is a firecracker. She would not allow, I truly believe if it wasn't for her, I think June would have suffered over and over, and she would not take no for an answer. She documented this case, I mean, extensively. I still have the binder, the little white binder of June. Everything that you guys wrote down about her case. My God, that was, I miss June. She was a beautiful woman, beautiful. But
Bishop Long, she adored you. You have to remember too, though, and I just want to bring this up really quick. She had, she was so desperate to get help that in a roundabout way, they reached out to different people who turned their back on her and entered her home and took advantage of her, all for the adrenaline rush of ghosting. And it wasn't until Bishop Long came along and he told her that he would never walk out on her, and he never did. And when I called him to let him know that she had passed, and I asked if he would do her funeral, which, by the way, is almost unheard of for a Catholic bishop to do a funeral, right? He said, absolutely. And it was the next day he was there. He never let go of her. So I know Bishop Long just recently had surgery, and I know that, there's a lot of nasty people that have a lot of things to say, but he's a warrior too, and we adore him.
God love you, Angie.
Yeah, before we move to the next caller, Angie, one quick question. Your mother, June, was she extremely creative with replacing the F word with fiddlesticks and fudge?
She had a lot of creative ways of doing that. She did. She gave it everything she had. And when I tell you everything, Bishop Long will tell you.
She was a fighter.
It was USOB. She didn't give up.
Well, Angie, we thank you so much for your call. God love you. God hold you in his hand. You and your family. From the bottom of our hearts.
Angie, go to bishopjameslong.com, and I have a phone number there on the contact. There's a phone number there. Please contact me there.
I will do that.
Okay, thank you.
Angie, thank you, dear. All right, we're going to take...
Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Good night. All right, let's go to the phone lines again. We have Ronald in Minnesota. Ronald, you are on Dead Air with Bishop James Long.
Hey, how's it going? Hello to Bishop Long, and hello to Ken, and hello to George. And thank you, Bill, for taking the call.
Hey, Ronald.
And that Bill guy, he has a strange accent. I know.
I wasn't kidding.
He won't be able to get me back until next year when I'm there. Get me back. But anyway, I go to Pine Bush and visit with Bill and his mom, and such great people. But anyway, the great people in chat tonight, a wonderful show. a wonderful show. There's Ma in the background.
We appreciate that. Hi to
I
her.
wanted to say thank you for your show. And first time kind of winding up here by accident. And so glad that you're on KGRA. And Bishop Long, thank you for the work you do. And George and Ken, thank you for the work that you do. And I wanted to ask a question about something about witchcraft. You know, like when I use, like for instance, I use tarot cards. I am fairly good at it. I think of it more of entertainment more than anything else. But also, I do think that they can give you a message to help guide you. Now, I do also think that it's possible that they can lead to other actions that might not be reversible, meaning connections with things you might not want to be involved with. But if you're looking at it from a point of view of disinformation and more or less entertainment, okay, then I don't see the harm in them. They're just cards with pictures on them. They're not anything evil per se, okay? So the question is, does what you do have any connection? Like when somebody says, "Oh, well, you're sinning. You could be going to hell because you're doing witchcraft," or whatever. I'm not saying you, but I'm just saying in general, when people do the work that we do as far as helping somebody in the spiritual realm to help guide them or whatever, is it considered witchcraft? And are we in danger of any kind of judgment?
Okay, Ronald, we thank you for the call. Bishop.
Well, now as far as what I'm doing, if I'm doing anything that's demonic in nature, no, actually just the opposite. I'm fighting the demonic. So yeah, I wouldn't be I wouldn't say that. Now, if are you asking about yourself, or if is he still online or no?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Are you asking about yourself? Are you concerned about yourself because you play?
Yeah, for myself and for anyone who's kind of like
psychic medium,
getting their feet wet, so to speak.
Okay. Well, a lot of people will say yes, and the reason is they're saying is because here's the problem: when you're playing, or even when you're dabbling into it, as you say, playing with it, you with these cards, you don't know who you're speaking to, and that is the real concern. Because if you really, I always tell paranormal investigators, you got to be very careful, because if you go out with EVP work or use any type of recording devices or anything to speak with the spirit world, the problem is you don't know who you're speaking to. And that's opening a line of communication that could, in fact, cause very serious consequences. And so the minute that you do that, you have to understand that there are consequences for that. And that's the fear with using those. Now, do I think it's witchcraft and demonic? No. Do I think, however, that the demonic can manipulate and use those devices to control and speak with you and reel you in? Absolutely, they can.
Interesting. Well, thank you again very much for your show. Thank you for being here tonight. And
you're very welcome.
Hopefully you'll be here for a very long time, and we'll be able to get a lot of good knowledge. And if we have any questions, hopefully we can contact you on a personal level and get some help and some guidance.
Yeah, one thing you can also do, if you're good, first of all, I wouldn't play around with these just for fun, because you really can be manipulated. I would find somebody who's truly skilled and that they know how to protect themselves, ground themselves. But even then, you got to understand, even if you do protect yourself, and that's fine, but you still have to understand there's still that danger of the demonic being able to easily creep through and cause havoc. So I wouldn't play around with them, because that could lead you into some problems. I would find somebody who is very trained and knowledgeable, and they can teach you properly before you start getting involved with that.
Good idea. All right. Thank you very much again. Have a great night.
All right, Ronald. Before we move on to the next caller, Bishop, I had to get this in. Quick question for me. Is death a real possibility at the hands of the demonic?
Sure, absolutely, no question. Okay. Matter of fact, it's happened. Annalise McKell is a perfect example. And Annalise, it was terrible. Or some people know it as Emily Rose, the exorcism of Emily Rose.
Yes.
But what she endured, for those of you who don't know, I mean, she absolutely endured absolute hell. And in 1975, she died in 1976 due to medical care, but also the attacks of the demonic. So we can go into Emily Rose if you want to, but it was terrible. She was 68 pounds when she died. She technically died of malnutrition, dehydration, but that was also the demonic attacking her because they tried to enter food and water as substance of life into her body, but she would regurgitate violently. And so she couldn't hold the food down and the water down. And so in the movie The Exorcist, the pea soup is actually very common for someone who's possessed, especially in transient or perfect possession or full possession. And so with her case, there were some other things that they did that was negligent, but ultimately the demonic constantly attacked her to the point where her body was just riddled with constant attacks.
Yeah, that was like my bigger point, were the actions of those around her.
Yeah, I think they made a huge mistake, a massive mistake in not in stopping her medication. However, let's understand that she was diagnosed with epilepsy, and she had taken medication, and she still felt that this medication was doing absolutely nothing. It was not helping her at all, and the epilepsy attacks continued. The visions continued. The smelling that she smelled of rotten flesh was constantly, she felt like she was emitting the smell of rotten flesh. This whole person, everything was just changing, and the medication she felt was doing nothing. And so that's why they decided to go to the priest. The problem is that they stopped the medical help while also maintaining possession. When she was 68 pounds at 23 years old, first of all, they should have never allowed her to get 68 pounds. That's number one. Right. They should have stopped it. At the moment when her body was beginning to get really sick, they should have stopped and said, okay, that's enough. The body can only withstand so much torture. And so they should have stopped. We got to get her help. We got to get her strong, and then perhaps consider continuing the exorcisms. But they failed to do that. They shouldn't have.
Terrible.
Ken, I need to go cheap plug here very, very quickly.
Sure.
If you guys have not found Bishop Long on TikTok, here is the link, and here is the banner so you guys can see what he has been doing. If you look right at there where it says exorcism, Bishop James Long just recently posted the actual audio from the exorcism of Annalise Michelle, and it is terrifying to listen to.
Horrific.
So make sure you guys, if you have TikTok, find Bishop James Long on there and look at all of his content. And don't forget, Bishop, you also do some live events, do you not?
Well, I haven't yet because of the weight loss surgery, but I will be doing an event. I think I'm going to Las Vegas in December.
Well, I mean, the live. You have Bible one night.
Oh yeah. We have Bible study every Wednesday from 8 to 10, and right now we're also talking about Revelations in the second hour. And then on Friday nights is our Paranormal Fridays. And so, but you never know if there's just a schedule change coming. You just never know. Well, so we'll have to see about that in the future. But
stay tuned.
Yeah. So we do the paranormal shows on Friday nights.
Okay. We're going to move back to our phone lines here. We have Jackie in Alabama online. Jackie, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Ken. I hope
you
remember who I am.
I do.
Yeah, I love how you say Florida. It just tickles me. It sounds like a mobster. I just want to eat a big plate of spaghetti every time you say Florida.
Florida, go have your spaghetti.
It makes my day. And Bishop, it's so nice to talk to you. And you are such a blessing. And also remember, Bishop also has evening prayer. He'll be mentioning this. And if you have that angel song at the end, that'll be wonderful. Just a suggestion. And George, you're a blessing. Both you and Ken, I look forward to you every week. Your chemistry, I feel like I'm talking to two brothers.
Vice versa.
It's beautiful.
We look forward to you too, Jackie.
Well, he's more like an aged uncle to me, but
Can I tell you?
Well, My story happened to me a couple of years ago. Well, actually more than a couple of years ago, about 15 years ago. And I'm going to try to make it short and sweet.
Yeah.
But it's hard to make this short and sweet, but I'm going to try it. I used to work for a country radio station. And at that time, I was breaking away from the church because I received a lot of church hurt. What I didn't get, and I get now, is it wasn't the church. I mean, it wasn't God that was doing this. It was the church and the people that were in there, because people are flawed. You know, people are they're going to gossip. They're going to cause ruckus and stuff. And I was too sensitive. I was in my 20s. So now I'm almost 50. But anyway, I have learned. But during that time, when you break away from the past, you know, keeping your eyes on Christ, which I've always kept him close by, because I've always had that relationship with Jesus. Jesus ain't the problem. You know, I was going down another path of paganism, and it all of a sudden it just opened up these doors to where the demonic came for me. It was like, oh, so you're stepping away from him. So, hey, how you doing? And I was in a convenience store, and my friend Mary, I've always been surrounded by Marys. I'm an Episcopalian, which is Catholic light. You can laugh. But I've always went to the Catholic church, and there was a Mary room in Los Angeles where I'm originally from, and that's where I'd fall asleep. And if you want to know funny, there's nothing more funny than you're falling asleep in the Mary room and a nun's putting a blanket over you and you want to cuss, and you start, Holy Mother, hi Mother, how you doing? I mean, you stop mid-sentence, you know, and she's looking at you smiling as she's being so sweet to you. But I was talking to Mary, and I was sitting on a milk crate, you know, in the end of the convenience store right next to the register. It was like a horseshoe, how it was shaped, and it had one door on one end and one door on the other. And this man came in, and I felt this cold chill go up my back. And I glanced over, and he slowly turned his head towards me and gave her money. And I sat back, and my first instinct was, this man, there's something wrong. The next thing, this was during cassette tapes. This proves how old this was. It was in the 90s. He was sitting right behind the cassette tapes, making a dead stare at me. And I said to Mary, do you know this man? And she said, what man? I was the only one seeing this. The next thing, the man is standing right next to me. I didn't hear this guy walk. And I felt so vulnerable. I can't tell you. It literally felt like boom. All the energy was taken out of me, like I was a wet cloth. And I literally physically, mentally, and emotionally wanted this man. I couldn't speak. And what saved me, even though I was mentally, physically, and emotionally wanted this man, in my head, I didn't pray to a goddess. I didn't pray to anything pagan. I said, oh, dear Saint Michael, I need you right now. Get here right now. And I felt behind me this warmth. And I felt these hands touch my shoulders, and I knew it was him. And it gave me the strength to say, get out of here in the name of Jesus. Next thing, I yell at Mary, do you see this man? And she says, what man? The opposite door opened and shut by itself. The next thing I'm saying, I'm standing there, and Mary, I'm shaking. Mary's like, what's wrong with you? And I said, I can't explain what happened. And she's like, do we need to call an ambulance? You look like you're pale. What's wrong? And I felt the cold chill come across my back again. And the man was standing in back in the window looking at me. And I turned around. I said, did you not hear me? And I was screaming. And she said I was screaming at nothing. I said, in the name of Jesus, get the hell out of here. And I pointed towards the road. And I said, Mary, do you not see this man? And she said, no, I don't see him. Ever since then, I've always heard little voices like, you know, little voices, you know, I've always felt like I felt spirit, but that opened up my mediumship that I really have tried to keep contained. And that also made a beeline, me going right straight back to God and saying, forget about this. I mean, if you're a pagan, bless you. I'm not judging you any way, shape, or form, but it's just not meant for me. You know, I just went straight back to Christ. And I said, look, Christ, I am so sorry. I need help. And it was like, I never left you. Don't worry about it. He talked to me like a brother to a sister. Don't worry about it. I've never left you.
Well,
That
Jackie,
is a story that I've always wanted to tell Bishop. And I can still remember the taste of the air, the way he looked, the people that were coming in, that slow turn to look at me. And if you ever meet evil, you know it. And if you ever meet grace, which I call St. Michael grace behind me, there was no way to explain that warmth. And it's like a blanket was enveloping me, like, I got you, girl. You called me, I got you.
Yeah. Well, Jackie, we thank you for the call. We're going to get the bishop's thoughts on this, but we appreciate you. Take care of yourself, hon.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bet.
Thank you.
Thank you. God bless you.
You bet. Bishop, thoughts on that?
Yeah,
a lot to unpack there.
It's powerful. It really is powerful. It's energy. We talk about energy here, and energy is nothing paranormal, really. It's it's physics. Even Einstein talked about energy. For example, energy. Easy way to explain negative energy, positive energy. I've said this before. Like, you're walking down the street, and someone's walking across the street, and you don't know that person, and you don't want to know that person. They are emitting such negative energy. We've all probably experienced someone we're like, nope, and we turn right around. Something's not right with that person. That's energy. The same way with a person can just walk in the room and not say a word, just their presence alone, and people suddenly start flocking to them. It's positive energy. So she, she could also be an empath, and it sounds like she certainly has a strong set skill there as well. So I'd be curious to see if she is an empath.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to another call here before we get to questions. Joe in Massachusetts. Hey, Joe, you with us?
Hey, how's it going?
We're doing well, Joe. You're on with Bishop James Long.
Howdy.
Hi, how's it going, Bishop?
Fantastic. How are you?
Very good. My question was, what do you feel is one of the biggest misconceptions when it comes to the demonic?
That's a great question. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions, no question about this in my mind, is that you can change the demonic's mind and somehow make them repent and go back to Christ. I have actually spoken to people who believe that, and this is a real serious problem. And they actually believe that if they are nice and kind to the demonic and try to speak with them and try to share with them God's love and how they can repent and they can turn around, that is a huge, huge mistake. You understand, their judgment has already been made. They've already been judged. They've already been condemned. It's done. And what the concern that I have when people think that they can change the demonic's mind and change their nature, remember that's ego, because they were in the very presence of God, the very presence, and they fully and freely rejected God even then. So to think that us, who are mere mortals and who are sinful creatures, can somehow do something more than what God can do, that's very dangerous. That's heresy. So I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions, is that we can change the nature of the demonic. No, you cannot. The minute that you think that you can is the minute that they've already beaten you and you don't even realize it.
Mm-hmm. I think that we all agree on
just reason with the demonic force. That's quite impossible.
I beg your pardon?
I said that would be quite impossible to try to reason with them, because that pretty much never works.
Yeah, you're 100% right. You can't reason with the demonic. Just like Winston Churchill said, you cannot reason with a tiger when your head is in its mouth. And that is so brilliant. It truly is. And just like you cannot reason with a demonic, there's no reasoning. And our strength alone cannot defeat a demonic. We have to call upon God and our greater sources, such as our guardian angels and St. Michael, to defend us in this battle. And when you call upon, and there's another misconception. I'm glad you asked this question. There's a huge, ginormous misconception here, and I don't know why, but we have lately, as a society, we put God here and demons way up here. And then when I tell people, well, have you called upon God? Well, yeah, but there's no yeah buts. Why are we elevating demonic entities over God? And I've noticed that is a real serious problem. When you call upon God, the devil shakes. When you begin to pray and you begin to pray the Our Father, when you begin to, the devil shudders in fear. And you have to believe and know this is true. And so there's a misconception that the demons are far superior than God. We got to stop thinking that way.
Yeah. All right, Joseph, we thank you very much for the call, brother.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you,
I think it's something that we've talked about before that we all agree on, but I would like you to address. Why is provocation, as we know it, as we see it portrayed, and a lot of times it's nothing but performance art on television, but people do take their cue from that because TV is a very, very powerful medium.
Yeah.
It is a very influential medium. This is why they sell Cadillacs and soap on television. So people want to mimic what they see. Why is, in your view, provocation such a fool's errand?
Okay, that's a great question, because you're not provoking. You're inviting.
Okay.
So, for example, if you beat on your chest, come on, I dare you to do something, demon. Come on, I dare you to push me. Come on. Okay, you've not provoked the demon at all. The demon is saying, oh, I will do something to you. You know, I'm going to do something to you when you're lonely and depressed and your wife leaves you, your husband leaves you, or you lose a job, or you're thinking bad things and bad thoughts about yourself. That's when I provoke back. So you see, the demon is not intimidated by you. Demons are not intimidated by us. The demons are intimidated by God. But in the end, you're not provoking at all. You are inviting. And there's a big difference between the two. And once you do that, the invitation is there for possession.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Provoking, by the way, is prayer. When you go into a demonic infestation case and you begin to pray the Our Father and Saint Michael, now you are provoking. Because now the demonic entity is going to, because you're provoking the demonic to manifest itself to perform, for example, the minor rite of exorcism that I do. That's provocation. Beating your chest and saying, I dare you to do something. I dare you to touch me. You're not tough. Come on, I'll beat you up. No, you just invited. You haven't provoked.
Yeah. There's something that I've heard you mention before that I found interesting because I hadn't heard these terms. And they sound, or they are defined pretty much the way they sound, but the difference between a transient possession and a full possession, if you don't mind.
Sure. A transient possession, I mean, they're both in a possessed state, but a transient possession is when the demonic will enter the body and leave at will. And so that is a quite violent, but it prolongs the agony. And so, for example, Annalise McCall, there were many times she played the piano, and there were many times that when she was not under the possessed state, where she was up and playing the piano, and she seemed normal, or her normal state. And then there's transient possession. Now, full possession, that's very dangerous, because when you're in full possession, there's no leaving of the body. The body is under a constant attack of the intellect and will, a constant attack, and that's quite dangerous. Because again, the body can only withstand so much trauma. And so when a person is in full possession, time is of the essence here. And that is an unbelievably dangerous situation. Both of them are. But a transient possession, and even a transient possession, when an exorcist will come into a person's home and you're dealing with the transient possession cases, there are times where the person is not in a possessed state. And what the exorcist will do is they will begin to do things quietly and privately. No one else knows what they're doing. But they're provoking, and we're provoking to force the entity to then manifest, and the person goes under the stage of possession, and then we begin the solemn rite of exorcism.
Mm-hmm. Bishop, I don't think I've ever asked this question. I don't think I've ever heard an answer to this question before, but let's revisit the will again. When we go from oppression to possession, it is when the individual gives up that free will. How is that given? Is it a thought, or must it be verbal? I mean, there are times when all of us sit there and go, I give up, kind of a thing. Where is that line, that dividing line that actually makes it where that demon says, Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay. Well, again, we're not talking about free will here. We're talking about the will, the intellect, and the will to continue, the will to fight. And so we've all had bad days. We've all had bad nights of sleeping. But now, when I'm talking about the will, that is the power that sustains us to keep moving on to the next day. That gets to a point where I'm not talking about being tired. We're past exhaustion. We're completely past exhaustion, to the point where physically you are unable to move. Your system is breaking down. Your immune system is broken down. You have nothing left in your tank. And we're talking again, past just frustration, past exhaustion. There is no more will. You've given up. You can't, you just have nothing else. And people say, well, how does that happen? Well, imagine if you're trying to sleep and the demonic will not allow you to sleep. So it is so your body has gotten to the point where it is at a dangerous point where you collapse from exhaustion because you're not sleeping, and your body's getting sick. And then the intellect, you isolate yourself. So once that will has been eradicated, then the intellect, the demonic obsession is rather quick. But a lot of times they'll work in contand with one another. So, and by the time you're finished, you just can't. I'm not talking about I'm so frustrated. No,
Right.
you still have that a little bit more juice in your battery there.
Yeah.
You have no more juice. You collapse.
The situation that globally we have had to contend with the last 18 to 20 months of pandemic, is it a ripe environment for this type of thing to occur?
Poltergeist is. Matter of fact, I've seen an increase in poltergeist activity, but not demonic activity. And I have seen an increase according to all the statistics and everything that I read, especially all the cases and the requests for help. It seems like the poltergeist cases certainly always increase when negative activity and extreme emotional stress is occurring. Poltergeist activity will increase. Poltergeist has nothing to do with demonic.
No.
Poltergeist is just simply energy. And so when people lose their jobs, or when something like this occurs, or poltergeist will occur.
Question for you really quickly, and this goes back to something Jackie touched on in her call, and this is something that personally just bothers me as a Catholic, somewhat of a lapsed Catholic, I guess. I think that I believe in God. I'm a spiritual person, but I am not one, like a lot of people, to go through the mass, the sort of ritualistic part of it. But what are your thoughts as someone who found their own way at some point? She mentioned just kind of being ostracized from the church for their beliefs, their sexual orientation, their involvement with the paranormal. Can you talk to us a little bit about how that just seems to sort of push people away? And is it a good thing, maybe in the long run, that they literally end up finding their own way?
Is this a particular person?
No, I think in just general terms, a lot of people are ostracized from the church because of their beliefs in the paranormal, their sexual orientation, spiritual beliefs, or whatever the case may be. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on that sort of restriction that people have in the Catholic faith.
Well, and of course, there's other faiths that are very, I guess, ostracizing, which is a shame. Besides the Catholic,
there's no question. There's no question.
Here's what I'm going to for those people who are LGBT. Let me just make this clear. God made you exactly the way God chose, and God doesn't make mistakes. And if people have a problem with you being gay, last I checked, they don't pay your bills. So unless they pay your bills, they have no right to make an opinion on your life. You are not hurting anyone. You're not harming anyone. And I do not believe that LGBT are choosing. I don't believe that it's a choice. That's absurd. No one would choose a life, especially in third world countries where they're persecuted and being thrown off the buildings because they're gay. No one would choose that. So the idea that people choose to be gay is absurd. You have to be at peace with who you are, and your faith is you have a right to choose whatever faith you wish to follow is right for you. And if people have an opinion about that, well, they can keep it to themselves, because they're not God. And they seem to forget one of the most important rules that Jesus actually told us that we must follow. And it's thou shalt not judge. It's very simple. It's very easy. It's not complicated. It's not rocket science. We are not here to judge one another. That is not our job. And people want to use scripture and try to justify hatred or calling this person an abomination, that person. And then you ask them, well, where did that come from? What part of scripture did it come from? Well, I don't know. But it's somewhere in there. Oh, I see. So you're talking about the Leviticus code or the holiness code. The holiness code, which has 613 laws, and you must follow every single one of them. And if it doesn't, you're an abomination to God. Now, which of the 613 laws are you not following? Or do you throw your furniture? Do you burn your furniture after a female has a menstrual cycle in her home? Well, that's in Deuteronomy, and that's a part of the holiness code. Do you do that? Do you blow your trumpet during Yom Kippur? Do you do that? Do you mix cottons? Do you eat shrimp? Do you eat pork? You see, we can go on and on and on about this, but the holiness code is obsolete. We no longer follow the holiness code. Mm-hmm. We follow the code that Christ gave us. Love your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. It's pretty simple. Otherwise, there was somebody who was really condemning people, and a monk said this. A Benedictine monk, when a person, I was in the seminary, and somebody was, they're doing this and judging the seminarian, and he looked at the seminary, and he said, "Why don't you get off the cross and let Jesus have a try?" And we were all like, "Oh, brother!" Somebody said, "Whoa, brother!" Yeah. But that was so true. That was so true. So here's the deal. If you're being ostracized by a church community and they're hating you and judging you, then that's not the right church community for you to belong to.
There you go.
And because that does not represent God, that represents ego, that represents judgment, and they're not listening to the actual word of God, which says love one another.
Before we say goodnight here, I want to move back into the process of exorcism because, I have a lot of questions about the nuance of it. And here's one. As part of your process, if you are going to go in and administer to an individual, first, you bless all the other rooms in the location before you enter the room where that individual is. Is this just simple? I'm coming at this from a layman's perspective. Is that a question of, okay, nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, or is there more to it?
Well, really, that's very important because the demonic, it's very similar to the minor rite of exorcism. You want to bless the entire building, and then the last place where, and really, the exorcism should be done on sacred ground. But there are times where it just simply can't. So you have to bless the whole home, and you have to make sure everything is consecrated, and then you go into using sacramentals of the church, which is holy oil and holy water. And that's another thing. Please, folks, if you're in a demonic case, stop throwing holy water around like it's tap water, because what you're doing is provoking. That's provocation. And so you got to be very, very careful. Now, it's different if you're using it on yourself and blessing yourself, but you got to be very careful about throwing holy water around, because if you're going into a demonic infestation issue, and there's a true demonic case that's there, and you start using what's called sacramentals of the church, which is holy water and oil, and you're going to get a reaction. So be cautious about that, because that's provoking.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that clarification.
Yes, absolutely. Bishop, we are down to the final 10 minutes here, and I want to give you the time because, again, you are a very, very busy man. I'm so thrilled that you had the time, made the time to come on with us this evening. I'm so glad that the things for you, what you're doing for yourself to get that energy back, and because I know it just means it's going to make you busier. But thank you for joining us tonight. But I need to push a couple things with you right away. First of all, tell everybody about your book on Amazon?
Well, actually, you can go to Amazon, or you can just go to bishopjameslong.com, and you can order it there. Under, I think it's under the store link, and all the proceeds goes to funding the ministry, because I'm self-funded, because I don't receive a stipend or paycheck. But someone had said, and because I do this for free, I'm not a really good business person. I'm not. I wish I was, but I'm not. But one of your callers asked about the angel singing, and I really would prefer to play that rather than promote any of my stuff. Agreed. You can just go to Bishop James Long, because this is beautiful. I don't know if you've ever heard this before.
Yes.
But you have? Okay. This was for those of you who have not, for the listeners, the viewers. This was actually recorded by a woman. She was in, I think, closer to 80, and she was in Israel, and she had a cassette player. And she loved when they sing Alleluia. She loved the choir when she just loved it. And so she was at this church, and she had recorded it. And then what you're going to hear in a minute is you're going to hear them singing, and then it stops. Well, when she brought the recorder back home, she played it, and something was very strange on that recorder, and she couldn't figure it out. Now, remember, this is a cassette player, so this is not digital, and this has been analyzed. It's proven has not been tampered with. And I would really like to hear this. I truly believe these are angels singing the Alleluia after the choir finishes. Would you like to hear?
Love it.
Please.
Okay. So this is the choir. Then it stops. They didn't hear this.
God.
You can hear people talking like.
Yeah, this is. Pretty cool, huh?
How that does not reinforce your faith is beyond me. That's incredible.
Is that a continuation of the same hymn, Bishop, or
It
is
is.
that?
It is, but it's with the angelic, because they sing Alleluia. Yeah, you can hear. Let me do this. See, that's the human voice.
Yeah.
But it's kind of it has that tone, but it's a little bit changed. It's I don't know. It's beautiful. The cherubims singing unceasingly.
Amazing. Thank you. Someone asked for that, and there you go. I am so glad that you shared that with us. Thank you for that.
Sure,
My
absolutely.
goodness.
Absolutely.
My goodness.
I'm speechless by that. I am. That is amazing. And that is the perfect way to end our time tonight with Bishop Long. And again, cannot thank you enough on behalf of Ken. You're always one of these people that are so approachable in the field, and everybody in the chat and everybody that's watching this live on any of the platforms or any of the people that will watch this post understand that this is a man who is accessible, and he is out there to help and has been doing so And by the grace of God, we have him in our presence. Bishop, can't thank you enough.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And God bless you guys and have a beautiful, beautiful rest of the October and a safe Halloween, of course.
Same to you.
Please come back and see us again soon.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Bishop.
Right.
Wonderful.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye. Oh, man. Now, we we are still in that month, Ken. And within this month, we have got still some incredible upcoming things to deal with, including if you wanted to talk about next week's guests.
Yeah, next week's guest, something a little special. Those of you who have followed us elsewhere know that when our friends at the Dark Zone have live events, typically we have them on, excuse my scratchy voice, we have them on the week before on our show with some of the, if not all the participants in them to talk a little bit about the live event coming up. And this Halloween, the 20th, 29th, 30th, 31st, they are going to be revisiting the Conjuring House, the farmhouse in Harrisville, Rhode Island. Susan Slaughter, Brandon Alvis, Kristen Luman, Mustafa Galinari, Jay Blumke will be joining us. So, and of course, Andrea Perrin. So they're all going to be joining us next Sunday, and we're going to talk a little bit about the upcoming event. They're going to share some of their stories with us. So that's going to be at 8 Eastern next Sunday night, right here on Dead Air.
And the following week, which is Halloween, is there anything? There's nothing special going on with you, Ken, right? That weekend?
Oh, no, just the usual. On the 30th, the second day of that, I will be at the Conjuring House with the aforementioned people conducting an investigation, doing some different things than you typically see. I'm going to be outside taking things like soil samples, try to determine some of these ghostly lights. There's going to be a sky watch that night. So there's a lot of things going on other than the typical paranormal investigation, which, you know, I'll be doing along with everybody else, EVP work, but trying to think outside the box a little bit. So, yeah, I'm really honored to be part of that crew, and I will be there on the 30th.
You're going to the Conjuring House.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if I mentioned this.
Maybe once or twice.
I wrote a book with Andrea Perrin. There's Andrea right there. I wrote a book. There's me. I've never been to the farmhouse. Never been to the farmhouse. And I know a lot of you, were supporting a couple of weeks ago with wonderful donations to super chatters and all that. Didn't make a lick of a difference. That's why I have a face for radio. They don't want me on TV.
That's just let him work this out. Let him work it out. He's some issues.
I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. Please hit that subscribe button if you've not done so already. That is Dead Air Full Spectrum on YouTube. Also, the thumbs up, critically important, smash that. And a reminder bell for the upcoming content, including next week's show. On behalf of Mr. Ken DaCosta, my name is George Lopez. Thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of the week. We'll see you next Sunday right here at the same time. Until then, have a great night.